What if a plane simply vanished into thin air, leaving no trace, no signal, no explanation? Across the globe, the skies have claimed aircraft in ways that defy logic, where radar blips fade into silence and wreckage remains elusive, swallowed by oceans, clouds, or forgotten terrain. These are not just accidents. They are puzzles written in the empty expanse above, haunting echoes of lives and stories suspended in time. Imagine watching a sleek aircraft ascend into the dawn, its passengers dreaming of distant horizons, only for it to disappear without a whisper. Where did it go? What forces were at play? From storm-laden seas to remote islands untouched by man, some disappearances challenge the very limits of reason, leaving investigators and witnesses alike grappling with mysteries that refuse to yield. Tonight, we trace these enigmatic trails through history, examining the planes, the people, and the unexplained forces that swallowed them whole. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into the skies where answers vanish and the mysteries linger far beyond the clouds. A pale dawn light slants across the moss-clad tarmac of a remote British airfield. The gentle curves of a vintage biplane rest quietly in the stillness, the black-painted letters G-A-H-N-P etched across its side. In this moment, the aircraft appears both timeless and fragile, a vessel of ambition poised at the threshold between safety and the unknown. In 1934, GAHNP embarked on a bold route from London toward Tokyo, threading through Europe, the Middle East, and into Asia's vast expanse. Its crew were experienced aviators, familiar with the challenges of long-distance flight. The journey progressed without incident for the most part. Paris, Brindisi, Athens, Cairo, all carefully logged, all routine. Then came the stretch beyond India, over lands etched with monsoon clouds and unpredictable currents. It was here, between refueling stops, that GAHNP simply vanished. No transponder blip faded into static. No panicked transmission cleaved the air. There was only radio silence and an absence that would not be answered. Search efforts followed. Aircraft circled, ships scanned the waves, ground teams combed dense jungles and foothills. Yet no trace, no twisted metal, no broken propeller, no hint of wreckage or distress. Theories began with the conventional: engine failure, miscalculated fuel, a sudden downdraft plunging the plane into an inaccessible valley. Regional weather logs noted heavy rain near the expected flight path, though nothing official registered a storm. Still, decades later, meteorologists revisiting those records pointed to possible atmospheric disturbances at that very location, aligning eerily with the plane's last known position. Pilots familiar with the route spoke of its invisible hazards: monsoon swells, rogue air currents, scant radio navigation aids. Could a volatile gust of wind have pulled the plane off course into uncharted terrain? Or could compass deviation, subtle and unnoticed, have nudged GAHNP miles from its course, beyond reach? Beyond these mainstream possibilities, more speculative threads appear. In hushed tones, some aviation historians wondered whether early military tensions in Asia could have played a role. Though no records corroborate an incident, the idea lingers. Might the plane have been mistaken for something more ominous? A misidentification, followed by swift denial. No accident, no explanation, just disappearance. Even more fringe theories emerge in local lore. In a remote highland settlement, villagers once spoke of a glowing wing slicing through a storm-heavy sky, followed by a deep, resonant thunder. Later, they claimed to hear a roar and sense a tremor beneath their feet. Only silence afterward. No debris was found, only a story passed through generations. Folklore further weaves in tales of a secluded mountain lake said to devour sound and light, into which the plane may have vanished. No bound journal entry confirms such a sighting, yet the legend persists in faded notebook margins. Some voices turn to Earth's hidden forces, geomagnetic quirks, magnetic fluctuations intense enough to disrupt early radios or unsettle navigational instruments. It remains speculation, but it underscores the fragility of 1930s aviation. Unsettled skies had power beyond explanation. The absence of physical remains is powerful in itself. No wrecked wing, no engine block, not even a fragment of cloth or paper to drift ashore. The trail ends in doubt, not with clarity. And so, what is left is more than a flight record. It is a question etched into time, into airspace, into human memory. We stand before the ghostly registration, GAHNP, and wonder, was there a fatal mechanical failure swallowed by jagged terrain? A navigational misstep toward obscurity? Or might something deeper, quieter, or now forgotten, have played a role? The sky offers no certainties. Lingering is the thought that maybe, just maybe, the answer rests buried beneath years of forest canopy, hidden in shifting riverbeds, or sleeping at the bottom of a crystal-clear pool far from maps. Or perhaps the truth remains unreachable, not yet framed in data or memory, but waiting for the right question to surface. There is no neat resolution here, only a stillness full of questions, and the pull of something lost yet longing to be known. From one vanishing flight to another, the trail of unanswered questions does not end with GAHNP. In fact, the mysteries deepen. We move now to a different chapter in aviation history, to a case involving one of the most reliable aircraft of its era, a plane so trusted it was called the workhorse of the skies. Yet even the dependable could be undone by forces we still struggle to explain. This is the story of the DC-3 that disappeared without a trace. The Douglas DC-3 was not just another aircraft. It was an icon. Streamlined, sturdy, and resilient, it transformed air travel in the 1930s and 40s, bridging continents and making long-haul passenger service feasible. Its reputation for reliability made it the backbone of both civilian and military aviation. And it was this aircraft, registered as NC-16002, that lifted off from San Juan, Puerto Rico, on the evening of December 28, 1948, bound for Miami, Florida. The night was calm. Weather reports suggested light winds and relatively clear skies. The aircraft carried 32 people on board, passengers settling in after Christmas holidays, and a crew accustomed to routine routes across the Caribbean. For all intents and purposes, it should have been an uneventful flight. But sometime after takeoff, something shifted. The DC-3 maintained radio contact for the first portion of its journey. Messages exchanged between the crew and ground control seemed ordinary, even mundane. Fuel levels were discussed, position confirmed. There was nothing to suggest trouble. Yet as the aircraft approached the Florida coastline, silence fell. No distress call, no emergency beacon. Just the sudden end of communication. What followed was a massive search effort spanning both sea and sky. The U.S. Coast Guard, Navy, and civilian aircraft scoured thousands of square miles of open water. Ships patrolled currents, eyes trained for floating debris or oil slicks. Hours stretched into days, days into weeks, and still no sign of the DC-3 nor of the 32 souls aboard. The disappearance was baffling, not least because the DC-3 had a proven safety record. Investigators began piecing together possible explanations. The most straightforward theory pointed to mechanical failure. Maintenance records revealed that the aircraft's batteries had been in poor condition, a fact noted by the Civil Aeronautics Board. Could electrical problems have cut off power to navigation instruments, leaving the crew disoriented at night over featureless waters? If the engines failed, the plane may have glided into the sea, breaking apart on impact and sinking before any wreckage could be spotted. Yet, even here, doubts remain. The DC-3 was capable of flying even with certain systems offline. Pilots often praised its forgiving design and stable handling. Would experienced aviators really have lost control so completely, so suddenly, without a word? Another possibility was human error. Could navigational mistakes have led the aircraft far off course into the vastness of the Atlantic? The Caribbean skies can play tricks on even seasoned flyers. Horizons dissolve into darkness, cloud banks obscure stars, currents push subtly against bearings. A small miscalculation early in the flight could have compounded over hours, placing the DC 300s of miles from where it was thought to be. But again, would no trace, no driftwood, no personal belongings have surfaced? And then come the more speculative ideas. Some suggest the DC-3 may have entered a sudden storm cell not captured on weather reports, an isolated squall capable of dragging an aircraft down in moments. Others point to the so-called Bermuda Triangle, a region already steeped in stories of vanishing ships and planes. Was the DC-3 yet another victim of this enigmatic corridor? Or was its disappearance simply coincidence, folded into folklore only because of geography? Fringe theories go further still. Some have whispered about magnetic anomalies disrupting compasses, leading to navigational chaos. Others raise the possibility of covert interception, an aircraft forced off course or downed during the Cold War era when suspicions ran high and secrecy was common currency. There is, of course, no evidence for such claims, but the silence left by the disappearance makes room for speculation to grow, unanswered and undismissed. Local legends add another layer. Fishermen along the Bahamas chain later spoke of seeing lights in the sky that night, a faint glow descending toward the horizon before vanishing. Was it the DC-3, struggling in its final moments? Or something else entirely? These testimonies are fragmentary, unverified, and yet they linger. Shadows at the edge of the official record. What is most unsettling is the completeness of the absence. 32 passengers and crew, an aircraft measuring nearly 65 feet in length, with a wingspan stretching more than 95 feet. Not a single piece has been recovered. Not a panel, not a seat cushion, not a scrap of fuselage washed ashore. It is as though the DC-3 was swallowed whole by the night sky and the sea below. In the years since, the case has been revisited, re-examined, and debated. Each time, the same impasse is reached. Without physical evidence, the truth remains elusive. Theories multiply, but certainty slips further away. And so, we are left with questions. Could a mechanical flaw truly erase an entire aircraft without leaving a trace? Could navigational error alone account for such a perfect disappearance? Or does the answer lie somewhere beyond what we know, buried under miles of water or concealed in a chapter of history never written down? The story of the DC-3 disappearance reminds us that even the most dependable aircraft, even the most routine of journeys, can end in mystery. The ocean keeps its secrets well, and perhaps, somewhere beneath the waves of the Caribbean, the truth still rests, waiting for the day it is finally found. Until then, the fate of NC 16002 remains unsolved, suspended between fact and speculation, a haunting reminder of how quickly certainty can vanish. One wonders, what else might still lie hidden just beyond our reach? From the open expanse of the Caribbean, where sea and sky seem to conspire in silence, our journey now turns inland, toward a place where the earth itself rises like a wall against the heavens. Here, in the jagged spine of South America, the Andes Mountains stretch for thousands of miles, their peaks dusted white with snow, their valleys cloaked in shadows older than memory. It is here, amid these colossal ridges and frozen winds, that another aircraft vanished, leaving behind one of the most haunting mysteries in aviation history. This is the story of a plane lost in the Andes. The Andes have long been both a barrier and a passage. Pilots flying this route described the experience as humbling, as if their machines were fragile intruders trespassing on ancient ground. Navigation was difficult, weather unpredictable. Storms could rise without warning, clouds sealing valleys in opaque curtains, while sudden downdrafts dragged even sturdy aircraft dangerously close to rock and ice. It was against this backdrop that a commercial flight set off in the mid-20th century, carrying passengers across the mountain corridor. The aircraft was a well-maintained machine, staffed by an experienced crew, its route carefully plotted. Families, businessmen, and travelers filled the cabin, unaware that they were about to become part of a mystery that endures to this day. For the first hours, everything proceeded normally. Routine radio calls confirmed the plane's position. Instruments reported stable progress. Ground control marked its trajectory on the charts. And then, silence. Somewhere between departure and its next scheduled destination, the aircraft simply ceased to exist on the airwaves. Search teams mobilized quickly. Helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft scoured valleys, rivers, and snowfields. Ground parties trekked into remote passes, listening for the faint echo of wreckage or the distant call of survivors. Yet the Andes are vast and unforgiving. Mountains can swallow evidence in snow, conceal it behind sheer cliffs, or bury it beneath avalanches. After weeks of searching, nothing was found. Not a scrap of metal, not a fragment of luggage. No proof that the flight had ever crossed those peaks at all. The most immediate explanations were grounded in logic. A sudden storm might have engulfed the aircraft, blinding the crew and forcing them off course. Strong winds could have dragged it into terrain before a distress call was possible. Some investigators pointed to navigational errors, noting that even a small miscalculation could have placed the plane miles from its intended route. Others speculated about mechanical failure, an engine stalling or a critical system breaking down at the worst possible altitude. But none of these theories accounted for the absence of wreckage. Mountains, after all, do not erase metal. Debris might scatter, but fragments should remain. Why then was there nothing? As time passed, more speculative ideas began to surface. Some locals whispered of hearing an explosion high in the clouds on the night of the disappearance. Was it lightning? A fuel tank igniting? Or something else entirely? Without evidence, the story remained only a shadow in testimony. Others suggested that the plane may have come down in a glacier, quickly buried beneath ice and snow. If so, it could still be entombed there, preserved in silence, waiting to emerge decades later when the glacier recedes. Similar discoveries have happened before. Mountaineers stumbling upon wrecks long thought lost, revealed only by the slow passage of time. Could this flight be another case, still sleeping beneath the ice? Then there are the more unusual theories. Some point to the remoteness of the Andes, arguing that the aircraft could have strayed so far off course it landed in a hidden valley, unseen by searchers. A few even suggest clandestine military involvement, though no documents have ever surfaced to support such claims. And, as with all great mysteries, folklore crept in. Stories of mountains that consume trespassers, of skies that open to swallow those who venture too close. These are tales, not facts, yet they persist in the margins of the official record. What makes this disappearance so enduring is the silence it leaves behind. A plane large enough to carry dozens of people, an experienced crew, a well-established route. And still, no answers. Families of those aboard waited for years, clinging to hope before settling into the long grief of uncertainty. Some imagined their loved ones surviving in a remote valley, cut off from the world. Others feared the opposite, that the mountains had taken them, leaving nothing to return. Decades later, researchers continue to study the case. Aviation historians pore over weather charts, flight logs, and maintenance reports, while mountaineers still search for traces in unmapped regions of the range. Each new expedition carries with it the quiet possibility of discovery. Yet so far, the mountains remain silent, keeping their secrets hidden beneath snow and stone. And so we are left to wonder, did the aircraft fall victim to the forces of nature, storms, ice, and wind, its remains concealed by the very landscape it dared to cross? Or is there another explanation, one we have yet to uncover? Could the truth still lie waiting in a forgotten valley, in a crevasse of ice, or in an account buried deep within archives? The Andes stand unmoved, a witness to centuries of passage, triumph, and loss. Somewhere within their frozen silence may rest the answer to what became of that ill-fated flight. Until it is found, the disappearance remains one of aviation's most haunting puzzles, an open question etched against the mountains themselves. One cannot help but ask, what else might the Andes still be holding in their shadows? From the frozen silence of the Andes, where mountains guard their secrets in ice and shadow, we turn once more to the open skies, this time over the endless stretch of ocean, where water and clouds blur the line between horizon and eternity. It is here, above and within the restless expanse of sea and air, that one of aviation's most elegant aircraft met its fate and vanished without a trace. This is the story of the Lockheed Constellation, lost among the clouds and sea. Few planes of the mid-20th century carried the prestige of the Lockheed Constellation. With its sleek, dolphin-like fuselage, triple-tail design, and graceful curves, it seemed more than just a machine. It was a symbol of ambition, of an era when commercial air travel promised glamour, progress, and the shrinking of the world itself. Known affectionately as the Connie, it was both a technological marvel and a visual statement, a promise that the skies could be mastered. But beauty offered no protection against mystery. In October 1949, one such constellation, operated by Air France and designated Flight 027, departed from Paris on a route that would eventually carry it across the Atlantic. Among its passengers were not just ordinary travelers, but diplomats, businessmen, and cultural figures, people whose lives seemed destined for continuity, not interruption. The flight progressed smoothly during its initial stages. Regular radio check-ins assured ground stations that all was well. Fuel levels, course headings, and weather conditions appeared manageable. Yet somewhere over the Atlantic, beyond the sight of land and within the shifting walls of cloud, the constellation fell silent. No distress call, no fragments located in follow-up searches, only absence, as though the plane and its passengers had dissolved into the very air. Investigators initially turned to the most rational explanations. The North Atlantic is a notoriously difficult environment for aviation, prone to volatile weather systems and sudden, violent storms. Could turbulence or icing have brought the aircraft down? If heavy ice formed on the wings, lift would have been compromised in minutes, leaving the crew with little chance of recovery. Others suggested mechanical failure. The Constellation was advanced for its time but complex, with 4 piston engines and intricate systems that occasionally proved temperamental. A fire in the engine bays or a critical failure in fuel delivery might have overwhelmed the crew before they could issue a radio call. In this scenario, the plane could have broken apart mid-air, scattering wreckage across a wide expanse of sea. But if so, why was no debris ever recovered? There is also the possibility of navigational error. Over the vast ocean, where landmarks disappear and the stars themselves can be veiled by cloud, even minor mistakes can multiply across miles. Did the flight drift hundreds of miles off course, away from the designated search grids? If so, the wreckage could still lie undisturbed, thousands of meters below, hidden in the cold blackness of the deep Atlantic. and then the questions turned stranger. Among the passengers aboard was a delegation of high-profile figures, including Marcel Cerdan, the celebrated French boxer, and several cultural icons of post-war Europe. The prominence of those aboard led some to wonder, could there have been foul play? Was sabotage possible? In the years following World War II, and with tensions rising toward the Cold War, suspicions were quick to surface. A planted device, a deliberate act, these were whispered, though never proven. No evidence of explosives was found, and no group ever claimed responsibility. But the speculation endures, if only because the void of answers invites it. Others look not to politics, but to geography itself. The disappearance occurred within a region often associated with mystery, the so-called Bermuda Triangle. Though skeptics dismiss the triangle as a patchwork of unrelated accidents mythologized into legend, the coincidence is striking enough that some still ask the question. Was the constellation merely another victim of unpredictable weather and navigation challenges in this stretch of ocean, or was there something more unusual at work? Some theories reach further still, into the realm of the speculative. A handful of fringe researchers suggest magnetic anomalies, sudden electronic failures, or disruptions in compasses that could have disoriented the pilots. Others weave tales of lights in the sky, of unexplained aerial phenomena, though such accounts remain anecdotal at best. Still, in the absence of wreckage, these theories cling to the narrative, never confirmed, never dismissed. What is undeniable is the completeness of the loss. A plane of considerable size, more than 40 lives, and not a trace, no floating debris, no oil slick, no fragments of luggage carried ashore. The Atlantic, vast and unfathomable, held its silence. For the families of those aboard, grief was sharpened by the lack of answers. Without remains to bury or wreckage to examine, closure was impossible. In France, memorials were erected, names inscribed in stone. But stone is heavy, immovable. The truth, by contrast, seemed weightless, slipping further away with each passing year. In the decades since, the story of the lost constellation has been revisited by aviation historians and independent researchers alike. Advances in undersea exploration raise the faint hope that wreckage might one day be located, resting in the abyssal plains. Yet so far, no discovery has been made. The aircraft exists only in memory, in photographs, in the lingering ache of unanswered questions. And so the case of the Lockheed Constellation joins the long line of aircraft that departed with certainty and arrived only as mystery. Was it weather, merciless and sudden, that pulled the elegant machine down into the sea? A mechanical failure hidden within its complex design? A navigational error that left it alone in unsearched waters? Or something stranger, something still beyond our reach? The constellation's disappearance reminds us of the fragility of even the most celebrated aircraft, and of the vastness of the world still capable of hiding their remains. Clouds can swallow a plane in seconds. Seas can erase evidence for generations. Until something is found, until metal or fabric or a single artifact is brought to the surface, the fate of that flight remains unresolved. One cannot help but wonder, beneath the rolling waves of the Atlantic, what secrets still rest, silent and unseen. From the silence of the Atlantic that swallowed the constellation whole, we now move to another mystery born from the same vast waters. This time, the story unfolds not with a single aircraft, but with 5, an entire squadron of naval planes that set out on a routine training mission and never returned. Their disappearance would become one of the most enduring legends of the sea and sky. This is the story of Flight 19, lost in the Bermuda Triangle. The setting is December 5th, 1945. The Second World War has ended only months earlier. Naval aviation training in Florida continues, preparing pilots for a world still uneasy in its peace. At the Fort Lauderdale Naval Air Station, 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers sit on the tarmac, their fuselages painted in muted tones of military gray. Engines rumble to life, one after another, a low chorus reverberating through the coastal air. The mission is simple, a 3-legged navigation exercise known as Flight 19. The plan: fly east into the Atlantic for 120 miles, turn north for 73 miles, then return southwest to base. A routine drill designed to sharpen skills, nothing more. 14 men take their places: pilots, radio men, gunners. The leader, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, is a seasoned aviator with combat experience in the Pacific. For him, this should be nothing unusual. Shortly after 2 p.m., the squadron lifts into the sky, heading east over calm seas beneath a pale winter sun. For the first hour, all goes as expected. Radio transmissions are crisp. Bearings are checked. Speeds and altitudes remain steady. Then, as the planes begin their turn northward, the first hints of trouble emerge. Taylor's voice crackles over the radio. "Both my compasses are out. I'm trying to find Fort Lauderdale, but I'm not sure where we are." The statement startles those monitoring from the ground. 2 compasses, failing simultaneously? Such malfunctions were rare, but not impossible. Weather reports noted some cloud cover and haze drifting over the sea, conditions that could complicate navigation. Still, the sudden uncertainty in Taylor's tone marks the beginning of Flight 19's unraveling. Minutes stretch into an hour. Taylor reports shifting landmarks below, convinced the squadron has drifted over the Florida Keys, hundreds of miles from where they should be. His men, trained to follow their leader, circle and adjust course as instructed. On land, control towers attempt to triangulate their position, but radio static grows worse, distorted by distance, interference, or perhaps something else. As daylight fades, transmissions become more frantic. Fuel is running low. Taylor considers turning west toward what he hopes is Florida. Other pilots are heard questioning his orders, suggesting that the squadron fly west regardless of his command. But the hierarchy of military discipline holds, and most stay with their leader. By nightfall, contact weakens further. The final transmission is faint, fragmented. "We can't hold much longer. We may have to ditch." After that, silence. 5 planes, 14 men. Vanished. The Navy wasted no time. Search planes launched immediately, joined by ships patrolling the Atlantic. That very evening, a PBM Mariner rescue aircraft departed to scan the suspected area, only to vanish itself with 13 more men aboard. Witnesses on a passing vessel reported seeing a fireball over the sea, leading investigators to conclude the Mariner likely exploded mid-air, perhaps from a fuel leak. But the coincidence of another disappearance, on the same night, in the same region, only deepened the mystery. Despite one of the largest air-sea searches in history, covering over 250,000 square miles, no wreckage from Flight 19 was ever found. No floating debris, no oil slicks, no bodies. Nothing. It was as though the ocean had simply erased their presence. The official Navy report listed the cause as undetermined. Many factors were considered. Pilot error seemed the most straightforward explanation. If Taylor truly believed he was over the Keys rather than the Bahamas, his decisions would have led the squadron east, further into the Atlantic rather than west toward Florida. In such a case, fuel exhaustion would have forced the Avengers into the sea, where they likely broke apart and sank. Another possibility was equipment failure. Compasses might have malfunctioned due to electrical issues or been affected by atmospheric anomalies. Without reliable bearings, even experienced pilots can become fatally disoriented, especially over water where the horizon offers no visual reference. And yet, doubts linger. If the planes ditched at sea, why was not a single piece of wreckage ever recovered? The TBM Avenger was a large and rugged aircraft, nearly 40 feet long with broad wings. Even if the planes sank quickly, debris, life vests, rafts, or fuel tanks should have floated. The complete absence of evidence troubled investigators then and continues to puzzle researchers today. It was here that speculation began to stretch beyond conventional explanations. Some have suggested sudden violent weather, rogue waves, or freak squalls could have dragged the planes down. But weather logs from that day recorded only scattered showers, not catastrophic storms. Others point to magnetic disturbances. The region encompassing the so-called Bermuda Triangle is one of the few places on Earth where magnetic north and true north align, potentially confusing compass readings. Could this have been the reason Taylor's instruments failed? Or was it something stranger, an electromagnetic phenomenon yet to be understood? And then, of course, there are the more speculative theories, whispers of time slips, dimensional anomalies, or even extraterrestrial intervention. These ideas, while unsubstantiated, have taken root in popular imagination precisely because of the sheer void left behind. When no wreckage is found, when no answers are given, mystery fills the space. Flight 19 has since become one of the defining legends of the Bermuda Triangle, a case that crystallized the region's reputation for inexplicable vanishings. Yet behind the myth lies a very real tragedy. 5 planes, 14 men, and a rescue crew of 13 more lost to the ocean. Families waited for news that never came. Naval files, revised and reclassified, still leave key questions unanswered. Did Flight 19 simply run out of fuel and sink into deep waters beyond the reach of searchers? Did navigational errors lead them into an unmarked expanse, their final hours spent circling in desperation? Or was something less tangible at work, an anomaly of sea and sky that continues to elude explanation? The Atlantic remains vast, its depths still largely uncharted. Perhaps the Avengers of Flight 19 lie there still, preserved in silence. Or perhaps they will never be found, existing only as echoes in history, their story bound to the endless waters of the Bermuda Triangle. And so the question lingers, what really happened that December afternoon when 5 planes flew into the sky and never returned? The mystery endures, suspended between fact and legend, inviting us still to wonder what else may be hidden beneath the waves. From the silent expanse of the Atlantic to the icy peaks of the Andes, aviation history is dotted with mysteries that defy explanation. Each disappearance leaves behind questions that stretch beyond technical analysis, probing the very limits of human understanding. In the early hours of March 8, 2014, the world was confronted with one such modern enigma: Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, a plane that vanished without a trace, leaving 239 souls suspended in uncertainty. It began as a routine flight, MH370, a Boeing 777-200ER, taxied from Kuala Lumpur International Airport, Malaysia, destined for Beijing, China. Sleek and technologically sophisticated, the 777 was designed for safety and reliability. Its twin engines capable of traversing thousands of miles over oceans with near-perfect precision. On board were 227 passengers and 12 crew members, a mix of families, businessmen, and travelers, unaware that the night ahead would transform routine aviation into one of history's most confounding mysteries. The weather that evening was calm, with the typical tropical haze of Kuala Lumpur. The aircraft lifted smoothly into the night sky at 12:41 a.m., fading into darkness above the South China Sea. Early radio exchanges with air traffic control confirmed the flight was proceeding normally. Instrumentation was functioning, crew reports were routine, and the autopilot guided the plane along its intended path. But then, at 1:19 a.m., the last words were transmitted from the cockpit. "Good night, Malaysian 370. Shortly after, the plane disappeared from civilian radar. At first, it seemed like a technical glitch, but military radar later revealed something astonishing. MH370 had deviated sharply from its flight path, turning west across the Malay Peninsula before heading toward the Andaman Sea. The aircraft had switched off its transponder, effectively vanishing from conventional tracking. For hours, it traversed airspace under silence, leaving controllers and loved ones in a growing state of alarm. Search efforts were immediate and unprecedented. Ships and aircraft scoured the South China Sea, Andaman Sea, and Bay of Bengal. Satellite data provided partial insight, showing intermittent handshakes between the aircraft and an Inmarsat satellite. Analysts calculated arcs extending deep into the southern Indian Ocean, suggesting a long, deliberate flight far from its intended path. Yet, despite exhaustive efforts, no debris was found in the initial search areas. The absence of evidence transformed the disappearance from a tragic accident into an international enigma. Why did MH370 deviate from its flight path? What caused the transponder to be switched off? Did the crew maintain control, or did an unforeseen event incapacitate the flight? Experts explored the most likely scenarios first. Mechanical failure was considered, but the Boeing 777 is among the world's most reliable aircraft, with redundant systems designed to withstand engine loss, hydraulic failures, and electrical malfunctions. A sudden catastrophic failure, while possible, would likely have left wreckage visible in the immediate ocean area, yet none appeared. The possibility of fire or decompression was weighed, though these events would have generated emergency transmissions or radar anomalies detectable by satellites. Human factors, however, remain central to the mystery. Some investigators suggest pilot action, intentional or unintentional, may have influenced the course change. The captain, Zahari Ahmad Shah, was an experienced aviator, respected for his skill and calm under pressure. Could he have deliberately diverted the aircraft? Evidence is circumstantial at best. Home flight simulators indicated hypothetical long-range paths, but they do not prove intent or action. Others speculate a hijacking, though no credible claim surfaced, and radar data suggests no intercepting aircraft were involved. As conventional explanations faltered, more speculative theories emerged. Some suggest sudden anomalies in weather or magnetic fields may have disrupted instrumentation. Others point to the vastness and remoteness of the southern Indian Ocean as an agent of concealment, a place where even a large aircraft can disappear beneath waves, currents, and depth without leaving immediate trace. Fringe ideas, though less grounded, have entered public discourse: abductions, clandestine military operations, and even extraterrestrial involvement. While lacking evidence, these narratives reveal a human desire to explain the unexplainable, filling the void left by absence. Pieces of the puzzle did appear. In July 2015, a flaperon washed ashore on Réunion Island, confirmed to belong to a 777. Subsequent fragments appeared along African coasts, hinting that MH370 had indeed ended in the southern Indian Ocean. Oceanographic models suggest that currents could carry debris over thousands of miles, but the main fuselage remains elusive, buried in deep, turbulent waters. Attempts to locate it with sonar mapping, remotely operated vehicles, and underwater robotics have yielded nothing definitive, though surveys continue. The human impact is profound. Families of the passengers and crew live with unresolved grief. They have memorialized their loved ones on beaches, in airports, and online forums. Yet the inability to recover the aircraft denies closure. Investigators and enthusiasts alike continue to sift through satellite data, flight records, and oceanographic simulations, hoping to uncover what the Indian Ocean has concealed. One of the most haunting aspects is the modernity of the disappearance. This is not an aircraft lost in the 1940s, in an age of rudimentary radio and analog navigation. This was a 21st century aircraft, flying in monitored airspace, equipped with satellite communications and multiple tracking systems. And yet it vanished. A reminder that even in an era of near-omniscient observation, the world remains capable of concealing its secrets. The disappearance of MH370 challenges assumptions about aviation, technology, and human perception. It highlights the limits of our instruments, the vulnerabilities of communication, and the immense scale of the oceans. It forces us to consider uncomfortable questions. Could a skilled crew vanish without leaving trace? Could a technologically advanced aircraft traverse thousands of miles unnoticed? Could events occur that evade even the most meticulous planning and monitoring? In the years since the disappearance, research continues on multiple fronts: ocean modeling, debris analysis, and search methodologies. Every new piece of information is scrutinized, yet every potential breakthrough seems to raise as many questions as it answers. Some hope remains that the aircraft may eventually be found, resting silently on the seabed, providing the final data necessary to solve the mystery. Yet for now, the plane remains a ghost, drifting invisibly across the imagination of the world. And so, the story of MH370 endures, a modern enigma, suspended between fact and speculation. What we know is limited. What we do not know stretches across the Indian Ocean in silence. Was it a tragedy of circumstance, human intent, or a combination too subtle for current analysis to detect? The ocean holds the answer, perhaps in plain sight, perhaps forever beyond reach, until the wreckage is discovered, until the last transmission is understood. MH370 remains an unresolved riddle. It is a testament to the mystery of flight, the unpredictability of nature, and the fragility of human technology. And it leaves us with a question that continues to echo. How can something so large, so modern, and so visible disappear without a trace? Above the waters of the southern Indian Ocean, the answer still lies hidden, silent, deep, and unreachable, waiting for the day when light finally pierces the darkness. The Hawaiian waters stretch endlessly beneath the late afternoon sun, waves glinting like scattered shards of glass. To the untrained eye, it seems serene, untouched. But to those who have studied the skies and the seas, the stretch of ocean surrounding Oahu is a theater of mystery, an expanse where countless stories of vanished vessels and missing aircraft converge. It is here, just off the southern coast of the island, that Transair Flight 810 was last seen, and where questions linger unanswered, even decades later. Transair Flight 810, a cargo aircraft, was not among the most celebrated flights in aviation history. Its route, its mission, was routine, almost mundane. Yet, on a day in the late 20th century, the ordinary transformed into the extraordinary. Departing from Honolulu, bound for Maui, the aircraft's journey should have taken a few short hours over familiar routes. Instead, it became a puzzle, a whisper in the annals of aviation enigmas. The last known communication was brief, matter-of-fact, yet haunting in its finality. Controllers on the ground received routine reports, altitude, position, weather checks. Then, as if swallowed by the sea itself, all signals ceased. Eyewitness accounts are scarce but compelling. Fishermen and small craft operators in the vicinity of Oahu recall seeing an aircraft that seemed to struggle against an invisible current of misfortune. Some spoke of sudden plumes of smoke or unusual engine noises piercing the otherwise calm Pacific air. Radar data, though limited at the time, shows an erratic path, altitude shifts and deviations that puzzled even seasoned air traffic controllers. What could cause a plane, sturdy and well-maintained, to falter in these waters where skies are usually forgiving and turbulence mild? Mainstream investigations pointed to mechanical failure, a plausible explanation for a flight that never reached its destination. Aircraft, even those meticulously serviced, are not immune to sudden malfunctions. Engine failure, structural fatigue, or a critical systems malfunction could have forced the pilot into an emergency, a desperate attempt to reach land that ultimately went unseen. Wreckage found sporadically across the seabed seemed to support this narrative. Pieces of fuselage, fragments of cargo, a solitary seat, silent testimony to a catastrophic event whose specifics remain frustratingly out of reach. Yet, the more one delves into the details, the more subtle anomalies emerge. The sea, in its vastness, can be deceptive. Currents and tides can carry debris hundreds of miles from the original crash site, complicating efforts to reconstruct the final moments. But some elements simply do not fit neatly into a mechanical failure scenario. Witnesses describe odd behaviors, lights flickering, the plane appearing to change direction without apparent cause, even moments when it seemed to hover above the waves, as if reluctant to descend into the depths. Could these have been optical illusions, tricks of the sun on the water? Or could they hint at something more enigmatic? Speculation is not absent from the records, though it is approached with caution. Some theorists suggest the involvement of weather anomalies unique to the Hawaiian archipelago. Sudden microbursts, unpredictable wind shear, and localized electrical storms are known to arise with little warning, even on clear days. Could such a phenomenon have conspired with mechanical vulnerability to pull the aircraft from its flight path? The meteorological data from the day supports the possibility, but provides no definitive answer. The instruments can map pressure changes and wind vectors, yet they cannot capture the full story of what a plane experiences in those fleeting, critical moments. More unconventional hypotheses have found their way into the broader conversation. Some point to the history of unusual electromagnetic activity in the Pacific corridor near Oahu, where sporadic anomalies have occasionally affected both aircraft and maritime navigation. Could such interference have disrupted instrumentation, leading to a chain reaction of confusion in the cockpit? Others, more speculative still, wonder if the region's rich tapestry of folklore, legends of spirits and forces that dwell beneath the ocean, might have played a metaphorical role in how these events were perceived, or even a practical one in the minds of those who study aviation mysteries. Recovery efforts were constrained by the depth and complexity of the seabed, a labyrinth of volcanic ridges and underwater valleys. The wreckage that has been retrieved tells fragments of a story, scorch marks suggestive of fire, the twisted remnants of metal indicating immense pressure, yet no comprehensive narrative emerges. The ocean, for all its allure and beauty, acts as a vast archivist with selective memory. It preserves, yet conceals. Every dive, every sonar scan brings new pieces into view, only to reveal more questions than answers. Why did the flight deviate? Could more timely rescue have been possible? Or was this an event destined to be incompletely witnessed from start to finish? Investigators interviewed colleagues, maintenance crews, and pilots familiar with Flight 810's history. Accounts of the plane's prior mechanical issues surfaced. Minor, routine, nothing that would suggest imminent disaster. Yet, hindsight has a tendency to magnify the ordinary into portent. The human mind searches for patterns in chaos, trying to extract a narrative where the elements themselves may be indifferent to storytelling. And still, questions endure. Was there something in the sequence of communications overlooked? A subtle cue that could have predicted the tragedy? Did the pilot have enough time to attempt a controlled ditching, or was the descent abrupt, merciless, and final? Even today, the disappearance of Transair Flight 810 sits at the intersection of known facts and persistent unknowns. Oceanographers continue to map the area. Sonar technology becomes more sophisticated, yet the plane's story remains partial, like an unfinished sentence. Each expedition adds layers to our understanding but does not fully resolve the mystery. Historians and aviation experts speak in careful terms, acknowledging the plausible while leaving room for the unexplained. It is a balancing act, a careful dance between evidence and imagination, caution and curiosity. The intrigue deepens when considering the human dimension. The flight crew, professionals with experience and training, faced a sequence of events they could not entirely control. In the cold calculations of physics and engineering, their choices and reactions are variables in an equation that ends with silence. What thoughts passed through their minds in the final moments? Did they have time to see the ocean stretching endlessly below? Or did the world contract to the cockpit, a sudden arena of crisis? Such reflections humanize the mystery, anchoring it not just in metal and radar readings, but in the lived experience of those who were aboard. As the sun dips toward the horizon over Oahu, the waters shimmer with a quiet menace, beautiful and unknowable. The currents move in patterns unseen, whispering through channels carved by volcanic fire centuries ago. Somewhere beneath those waves, fragments of Flight 810 rest, each a testament to a day that began like any other but ended as an enduring puzzle. Does the ocean remember? Perhaps. Or perhaps it has chosen to guard its secrets, allowing only glimpses to surface for those who search with patience, imagination, and a deep respect for the unpredictable forces of nature. In pondering Transair Flight 810, one is left with more than facts. There is an eerie contemplation of absence, the space where certainty should reside but does not. And it is in this space, this quiet void, that the mind lingers, wondering what truly happened over those Pacific waters. What traces, however small or subtle, remain hidden, waiting to be discovered, or perhaps destined never to be known. The mystery persists, inviting all who contemplate it to peer into the vast expanse, to acknowledge both the limits of human understanding and the haunting allure of what remains unseen.